siddhaḥ pṛthak-pṛthag-bhāvo yadi va rāga-raktayoḥ saha-bhāvaṃ kimarthaṃ tu parikalpayase tayoḥ.
Siddhaḥ pṛthak-pṛthag-bhāvo yadi va rāga-raktayoḥ saha-bhāvaṃ kimarthaṃ tu parikalpayase tayoḥ. MMK chapter 6 verse 7. Otherwise, what is the point if separate existence of redness and reddened one is established, of you nonetheless postulating the coexistence of those two? So as you can see, it's a very lovely sunny morning here in northern France, and I've been out shoveling up horse manure and laying it on what will be a bed of strawberries a bit later on, all being well. So it's often in this routine I'm now in that I memorise 2 verses in the late afternoon, the evening, and then sleep on them, practice as in the morning, go out and work, have a shower, and then come and make these videos. And it's always, generally speaking, it's the best insights come, if they come at all. I say whatever insights come when I'm working up a sweat, working out by the horses there, and carrying the buckets of horse manure back to use in the garden. So I was reflecting this morning, no horse manure, no strawberries. It's of course borrowed from Thich Nhat Hanh's no mud, no lotus. And the thing to understand about that phrase, which informs verse 7 and verse 8 that I've been memorising, is you can understand them at 2 levels. So again, relates to MMK chapter 24. Dve satye samupashritya buddhanam dharmadeshana loka samvri satyam cha paramartataha. The teaching of the Buddhas, the Dharma teaching of the Buddhas, rests on 2 truths, the conventional truth and the ultimate truth. So we're here to deepen our understanding of both those truths, but in particular, deepening understanding is deepening understanding of dependent arising, or in other words, emptiness. Tattva-darshanat, because of looking into what is, and what is in terms of especially emptiness. Navidvams tattva-darshanat. The wise one is not the doer because of looking into what is, or because ironically enough, you see, when I'm shoveling the horse manure, I'm not really trying to look into what is. I'm more enjoying shoveling the horse manure as one who's always enjoyed physicality. Just enjoying that, the physicality of that work. Then it's like tattva-darshana. It's not so much me looking into reality as something realises itself when I'm out of the way, when I'm busily engaged in doing some work. Something is realised, something like that. It's very hard to understand. It's been very, very hard for me to understand. 20 years ago, something happened that just it broke my world apart, because it didn't make any sense. The Zen teacher who I devoted myself to serving saw me as being on the other side. You know, you can imagine how heartbreaking, really, something like that is, because of his wrong perception, because of his worry, his fear turning into a self-fulfilling prophecy, his fear that he was losing his successor caused him to lose his successor. That's how it seems to me now. And so I've been carrying the resentment around. I've been bearing a grudge consciously, really, because it's that resentment, that anger, which gives me the fuel to want to work things out. It's given me the fuel 2 years ago to give up Alexander teaching and give up the work I was doing, never mind the financial consequences. I wanted to come to France and sort of make a real effort to figure out, to deepen my understanding of what Nāgārjuna is saying. And that feeling is always reliable, but I feel I'm going in the right direction, thanks to Nāgārjuna's guidance here, with hints along the way from Marjorie Barlow and Nellie Ben-Hur, Ron Collier, Ray Evans, my Alexander teachers of the past, with hints along the way from the Dalai Lama, Mathieu Ricard, Thich Nhat Hanh, Ananda Jyoti Bhikkhu, fellow explorers, if you like. So the point about no horse manure, no strawberries, or no mud, no lotus, is at the level of conventional truth, those two coexist with each other. Horse manure comes from the horses eating the farmer's produce, and the farmer's produce, or the gardener's produce in my case, comes from using the horse manure as nourishment for the strawberries. So in a sense, that's relativity between things. That's how scientists understand things. The ocean comes from the clouds, and the ocean, when the seawater evaporates, becomes the clouds. So it's relativity as understood in science. And in the same way, Shobo Genzo, in the chapter Kuge, which means emptiness flowers, flowers of, or flowers in emptiness, emptiness flowers, or flowers in space, as we translated it. See, flowers in space is more understanding of convention, on a conventional. It's like we discussed, the first of the dhatu, the elements, is space. And space is real, you know. So Zazen is digging a cave in space. So in some sense, it's important to have a sense of space through the vestibular channel primarily. But that's only conventionally true, because ultimately there is no such thing as space. There's just empty happenings happening, which we cannot get our heads around whatsoever. So in that chapter, it's really, I think, Macedonian. I haven't studied the chapter in years, but I'm guessing, in retrospect now, just thinking about it, that the flower of emptiness, or emptiness flowers, will be a better title, pointing towards the ultimate truth of the chapter. So in that chapter, the Chinese Zen master is quoted saying, "The blue lotus opens in fire." So the blue lotus opens in the height of the summer, you see. So the blue lotus is a symbol of coolness, and fire is the hot season, the very hot season in China or India, where the blue lotus blossoms. So I clearly remember Nishijima Sensei telling me this is an example of relativity in Buddhism. But that's only conventionally true. It's like no mud, no lotus, no horse manure, no strawberries can be understood like that. It's important. Nāgārjuna isn't denying the conventional truth. He's saying that in the Dharma teachings of the Buddhas, there are two truths, Dve Satye, Samupashritya. That teaching rests on two truths. The first is the conventional truth, which isn't to be denied, the value of it. But the second truth is the ultimate truth. And the ultimate truth, there is no such thing as horse manure. We spin into prapancha means we think of horse manure as existing as a thing unto itself, and we think of strawberries as existing as a thing unto themselves. So emptiness means there is no horse manure, there are no strawberries. So again, with Thich Nhat Hanh's no mud, no lotus, at the level of conventional truth, it expresses the fact that there is no mud without lotuses, because mud is decayed lotuses, and there are no lotuses without mud, because lotuses can't grow without mud, or without shit happening. So conventionally that's true, but ultimately there is no mud. Mud doesn't exist at all as a thing unto itself. The opening verse of MMK, na svato na piparato na dvabyam na pyahetu daha utpana jatu vidyante bhavaha kvachana kechana. Nothing whatsoever anywhere has ever arisen. You can't find anything anywhere having arisen. There is no thing, there's no mud, there's no lotus. So that's also no mud, no lotus. But it's a step, you could say, to step up, or it's a step down, it's a step back, because the backward step, saha-bhāvaṃ, we had at the beginning of this chapter, the backward step isn't really a progression, it's more a retreat, a retreat back to how it was before prapancha, before we drew a dividing line between Buddhism and non-Buddhism, before we established a Soto sect, establishment being the key word, before we established Dogen Sangha, before establishment of this, that and the other. So how does that relate to this verse? I'll tell you how it relates to verse samaha kramaha, the backward step, as I'm talking about. Gold face, red face, we wash them the same. That was my intuitive understanding of emptiness. That was gleaned from Gudo Nishijima, from practicing with him. See, what he called emptiness was he called it the philosophy of action, because the philosophy of action is a philosophy of emptiness. It means, Madhuri Barlow expressed it like this: if you feel you're wrong, so red-faced in other words, if you feel you're red-faced, if you feel it's like that's the establishment of the separate existence of you and the wrongness. If you feel you're wrong, if the reddened one and the redness is established, that's your starting point. That's what's alluded to in the previous verse. If you feel you're wrong, if it's established in your feeling that there is a reddened one and there is redness, then here's the way forward, or the way backward. Here's the step to take. Give yourself a stimulus to move. Go and shovel some horse manure. Move a leg. Make a physical movement, that's a stimulus. And you say no. So you practice, in the first place, say no to trying to be right. You're not playing this game in order to go from being wrong to being right. It's an exercise in letting it come out in the wash. It's not based on a non-empty conception of being right. It's based on an empty conception of going into action, letting it come out in the wash. So first thing, don't try to be right. Give up the idea of being right. Give up non-empty conceptions that broadly. Second, give your directions. Let the neck be free, to let the head go forward and up, to let the back lengthen and widen, sending the knees forwards and away. And give those directions again without trying to be right, without trying to do them, without even trying to feel them. Just think the words. But think the words like they really mean something, which they do. To let the neck be free, to let the head go forward, not pulling it back, head forward and up. Not arranging it, but not, because arranging it is also pulling it back and down. To let the back lengthen and widen, sending the knees forwards and away. So give up the idea of doing those directions. And then thirdly, give up the idea of going into movement. Okay, so the stimulus is, let's say, to join hands and bow. So if I give myself the idea I'm going to join hands and bow, then immediately I want to put on a good show. You know, I'm on camera. I want it to look like I know what I'm talking about. But there's no future in that. No future in trying to put on a good show, trying to do it right. It'd actually be much more useful to hope that you do it wrong and learn something in the process. See something in the process, or maybe have a chance to look at something in the process, explore something in the process. So I'm saying no to the idea of doing the movement well, in order to have a chance possibly of being free in making the movement. So that's demonstration of what Marjorie said. If you feel you're wrong, say no, give your directions, and go into movement without a care in the world. Let it come out in the wash. Now, I preempted that teaching however many years before, 20 years before, by it's saying in my own words what I'd understood of Buddhist practice under Gudo Nishijima. Gold face or red face, we wash them the same. It's philosophy of action. Don't worry if you're the reddened one or not. Just get on with it. Go into movement without a care in the world. Let it come out in the wash. Now that is a very empty conception. And Gudo Nishijima understood it intuitively. You know, he understood it intuitively, but he didn't understand it exactly in terms of theory, which was quite ironic because that was how he saw his role in the world. Was you know, he saw that in the Zen centres of America and in what was happening in France and Europe, thanks to Deshimaru and so on. Zazen was growing in popularity, but there wasn't true theory. There wasn't true theory. That's what I told Pierre Toulour the first time I met him, picked him up at the station. That's actually how I introduced myself. I said, you know, that's what I was taught. The important thing is to establish true theory. Again, it was quite ironic that in my sincere efforts to do that, to get to the bottom of what this is all about, I was perceived as having gone over to the other side. Big stimulus, you see, big stimulus. Shit happened. But my job now is to see to it that out of that shit, some kind of lotus might flower. So how does it relate to this verse? This verse has got to be about that, you see. That's the only way to understand it. It's not an ontological problem, what I've just been talking about. It hasn't been for me anyway. The problem is how to practice. What direction to keep going in. What is the direction of deepening our understanding, as opposed to pretending we know what the hell we're talking about. So, working from the English, I'll repeat it again since I've waffled on for so long. Siddhaḥ pṛthak-pṛthag-bhāvo, yadi rāga-raktayoḥ, saha-bhāvaṃ arthaṃ tu, parikalpayase tayoḥ. Otherwise, what is the point if separate existence of redness and reddened one is established, of you nonetheless postulating the coexistence of those two? See, on the face of it, Nāgārjuna is just saying, you are a bloody idiot. You don't understand the Buddhist teaching whatsoever. You might as well give up and go home. But another way of understanding it is saying, you, my opponent, are like Gudo Nishijima. You've understood the conventional truth of no mud, no lotus, of the blue lotus opens in fire. You haven't understood it on the basis of emptiness. That's what he's saying. His opponent is not the enemy of Buddhism. His opponent is the Zen realist, the person who's only understood the Buddha's teaching at the level of conventional truth, the level at which our job is to see objective reality, to wake up to harsh objective reality. That's the teaching of the Zen realist. What Nāgārjuna is saying is there is no objective reality in front of our eyes. It's not like that, ultimately. Ultimately, it's beyond. It's anirodham, anutpadam, anuchedam, ashashvatam. It's ashashvatam, beyond the existence of stuff. If stuff exists objectively, that's the eternity view. That's not emptiness, that's not dependent arising. Zen realism in the end is shasvata drishti, the eternity view. So I'm suggesting below the surface, this verse is addressed to an opponent who is not an enemy. He just he needs to deepen his understanding of emptiness. Okay, so the first word, otherwise, is va, which means or else. And so we need to have the last verse informed by it as well. So having thought about the meaning of otherwise, I've gone back and changed the translation of Kim in the previous verse. Because yesterday I translated it, how is there established separate existence of redness and reddened one? And then, on those grounds, coexistence of those two. So my understanding of the verse is the same, but I think it's better as a straight yes-no question. So is there established separate existence of redness and reddened one? And then, on those grounds, coexistence of those two? And I think the answer is, below the surface, the answer is yes. Because you start off with a conventional truth, and then on those grounds, you make efforts to establish coexistence in the first instance, coexistence understood on the basis of the conventional truth. So there's established the separate existence of the horse shit and the strawberries. Okay, you think first of all, you tell the gardener, who's not really interested in emptiness, just shovel up the horse shit and put it on the strawberry patch. Then after a few years of doing that, the gardener comes to realise that the horse manure and the strawberries are not existing separately. His starting point was a separate existence of them, but then the Buddhist teacher tells him, can you understand that actually the horse manure and the strawberries are not separately existing, they're coexisting. Okay, so that's useful teaching. It helps. Let's say the gardener, the guy who's doing that gardening work, the garden labourer, let's say his son died of a brain tumour. Okay, and so the gardener then goes to the person who's understood emptiness more deeply than he has, and he understands that terrible tragedy that's befallen him, losing his only son to a brain tumour, should be seen in a wider context of a universe in which we're all helping each other out. So when the strawberries grow, I'm going to give them to my direct neighbour in this semi-detached cottage you see behind me, whose Wi-Fi I've been piggybacking on for years and years. So he's let me use his Wi-Fi, he gave me his Wi-Fi password, and I'm going to give him strawberries next summer. And Madame Picard, who's been looking after the horses all this time, that produce the horse manure, I'm going to give her strawberries as well. So that's all nice, and that's true. You don't have to understand emptiness to see that. So on those grounds of separate existence of horse manure and strawberries, it's important to see that those two coexist. They're relative to each other. So is there established separate existence and then on those grounds coexistence? Well, yes. Never mind if it's not ultimately perfectly accurate in terms of emptiness. Yes, you can say that the horsemeal and the strawberries coexist, having existed separately. And otherwise, if you don't say that, then what is the point? Kim arthaṃ. So, va, otherwise, what is the point? Kim arthaṃ. If separate existence of redness and reddened one is established, siddhaḥ is established, pṛthak-pṛthag-bhāvo, separate existence of redness and reddened one, yadi, if. So word from English, if, yadi, separate existence, pṛthak-pṛthag-bhāvo, of redness and reddened one, rāga-raktayoḥ, is established, siddhaḥ. So otherwise, what is the point if separate existence of horse manure and strawberries is established, of you nonetheless postulating the coexistence of those two? Of you postulating parikalpayase. So that's second person singular of the causative of parikalp, and that means to conjecture or to arrange, to contrive. So parikalpayase, you postulating. Nonetheless, two means but, nonetheless. The coexistence, saha-bhāvaṃ, accusative, of those two, tayoḥ. So of you postulating parikalpayase, nonetheless, two, the coexistence, saha-bhāvaṃ, of those two, tayoḥ. Otherwise, what is the fucking point of you nonetheless postulating the coexistence of those two? You see, the word fucking is obviously poetic license, but when you read it, when you understand it like I've just explained it, it's so different from how philosophers and academics have understood it so far. What's the fucking point of studying this? What's the point if you're not going to put it into practice? That's what he's asking, more politely than I'm suggesting it. What's the point if you don't put it into practice? What is the fucking point of spending your whole life sitting like you've got a poker up your arse trying to have right posture? There's no point, ultimately. So as I was discussing there the meaning of coexistence of rāga-raktayoḥ, of redness and the reddened one, I suddenly noticed that that coexistence of redness and the reddened one was coexisting in me. So there's a nice little chance really to see what does it mean in practice. What is the point? What is the point of postulating? What is the point of the second-rate Buddhist teacher postulating the coexistence of the angry one, Mr. Angry, and anger? Well, I think the point is, in Marjorie Barlow's words, being wrong is the best friend you've got in this work. So, the best friend, it's saha-bhāvaṃ in the previous verse. When he says saha-bhāvaṃ vināpi saha, that the wrong kind of coexistence exists even without companionship. But the right kind of coexistence is when you make when Mr. Angry makes a friend of anger, when the reddened one makes a friend of redness. But particularly, so generally speaking, the redness in this verse is understood as desire. Raga means usually the redness of desire, especially sexual desire or craving. But when the Buddha is explaining Nanda how to deal with various kinds of redness, afflictive emotions, he talks about friendliness, in particular where there's malice or anger, vyapada dosha, the fault of ill will, the fault of malice. So it's Saundrananda, Canto 16, verse 62. And it says, when the mind, chitte, is agitated by the fault of malice, vyapada dosha kshubite, friendliness, maitri, should be cultivated, sevya, by directing it, upanayena, so that means that's instrumental of upanaya. Upanaya means bringing it near. So upanayena, by directing it near, by bringing it near, svapaksha, one's own wing, one's own side, oneself. So directing it towards oneself. When the mind is agitated by the fault of malice, as mine frequently is, anybody can observe, friendliness should be cultivated by directing it towards oneself. For friendliness is calming to a hate-afflicted soul, as cooling treatment is to the man of bilious nature. So, even though this is the teaching of the Buddha, it's still at the level of conventional truth. It just goes to prove the point that Dve satye samupashritya buddhanam dharma deshana. In the Dharma teaching of the Buddhas rests on two truths. And here is the Buddha resting on the conventional truth. Because the Buddha's saying, when you see that you're losing your rag and going off on a rant, the mind is agitated by the fault of ill will, the fault of malice. Let's say ill will towards Nishijima Sensei, who thought he'd got to the bottom of the Buddha's teaching when he hadn't. You know, he assured me he was enlightened, whereas in fact I don't think he was. So I feel some sort of ill will that I was deceived and then betrayed. What the Buddha's saying there is, it's not the Christian idea of love the guy who's shafted you. It's saying your mind is agitated by the fault of malice. Direct the friendliness towards yourself. Now that is Madhuri Barlow's teaching. Being wrong is the best friend you've got. Best friend you've got. That anger is the best friend you've got. It's not a question of trying to be right, trying to be the compassionate one. No. The point is precisely not to try to be right. Explore what the wrong thing is. Don't be afraid to be wrong. So, again, what's he saying in this verse? Otherwise, what is the point if separate existence of redness and reddened one, so anger and Mr. Angry is established, of you nonetheless postulating the coexistence of those two? So what Nāgārjuna is saying to the opponent, going back again to the previous verse, is it possible for there to be separation of Mr. Angry and anger, and then coexistence of those two? And the answer is yes, there is. On the basis of the conventional truth, that's the whole point. Mr. Angry makes a friend out of anger. Then the two are in a friendly coexistence. There's companionship between them, if you like, or cooperation, saha-bhāvaṃ, going together with each other. They're going along together. And maybe they go along together, and when you go into movement and shovel the horse manure and the sun's shining, it all comes out in the wash. It's talking about that kind of experience. But then the point is that it all comes out in the wash thanks to emptiness. If originally Mr. Angry and anger were non-empty, self-existing things, they could never come out in the wash. They'd be stuck as problems forever. So Matthew Ricard talks about this in the book where he has a discussion with his father about dealing with afflictive emotions. I remember him talking the metaphor of for anger, you can use an antidote. So the antidote to anger, as the Buddha expresses here, is you cultivate friendliness. In the first instance, towards yourself, and then it spreads out. But again, Matthew Ricard said you can use emptiness, because if you explore what anger is, you make a friend of anger, explore what it is, then you find there is no such thing as anger. The problem that you conceive of this heavy problem of anger melts away, because there is no such thing as anger as a thing unto itself. So I'm not saying anything new here. So Matthew Ricard has got that from the Dalai Lama and other Tibetan teachers who are steeped in this study of Nāgārjuna.
siddhaḥ pṛthak-pṛthag-bhāvo yadi rāga-raktayoḥ saha-bhāvaṃ kimarthaṃ tu parikalpayase tayoḥ.